Hello, it's Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada, and what we have here is a 1973 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia coupe. It's the second to last year of production. It's had a amateur hobbyist restoration to a decent standard. It's been mechanically rebuilt, and it's been serviced regularly and driven regularly in Calgary, Alberta. This car is for sale now. And I'll take you on a walk around of the car, inside and out, and then we'll do a short drive, and I'll demonstrate the operation of the car. In short, it's not rusty, which is the main thing, with any 60s German car, be it a Karmann Ghia or a Porsche. Mechanically, it looks to be well sorted. A recent safety. And all the operation of the engine, gearbox, brakes, suspension, appears to be, all in very good order. So this is a good entry-level classic for somebody. And as I like to say about the Karmann Ghia is it's like 85% of the experience of a vintage Porsche, but with about 20% of the cost. So let's turn this camera around and we'll have a look at this car in more detail. Okay, well, you can see that it is in a particularly vibrant shade of yellow. So there's no missing it. It's a fun color. We can see, I think that the bodywork is done to a decent standard. There's no evidence of any bubbling or rust that's coming through at all. And the floorboards look good, and underneath the car looks good as well. Okay, I would say that it was a glass in repaint, which means that the first things, if you're going to look at it critically, are that you can see masking marks on the weather seals, and the seal is a little bit dry. It doesn't look like it's leaking, but it's a little bit dry. But you can obviously see that the car was repainted. Next, we can look at the shut lines and the gaps between the different panels. And we see that they're not bad. Not perfect, but not bad. You can see some dried up weather stripping there. We can see there's a little bit of damage to that bumper. It looks like it got pushed in at one point. Little dent in the front. We can see some evidence of bodywork that's just done to an okay standard. We don't see a lot of chips. Trim pieces and hubcaps, wheels appear to be all there. The door fit, well, we can see it's a little bit off on the top, a little bit wide on the bottom. So the door fit on this car is just okay. We have, the weather strips a little bit dry throughout the car.
Nice car.
Thank you. The trunk fit is, just okay. There's no major differences. It's a little bit high on this side. The light lenses look good. The bumper looks decent. The sides of the car are slightly wavy. We can see that it looks like it's pushed in a little bit there for some reason. So we don't have a perfectly straight body, and we don't have perfect door gaps and perfect shut lines, but we don't have a rusty body, and I think of course rust is the main thing. So the guy who did it in his garage, and it takes many years of practice to get these things right, especially if you're doing some rust repair, to getting everything to fit back properly after you've replaced some metal. That's not a skill that comes easily. If we look in the car, we see that the sills are nice, and it's got looks to be original but in nice shape carpets. We can see a little bit of wear there, and underneath we can see the original floors. This is glued on, so I can't take it off, but you know, there's a little bit of corrosion that you can see, but it doesn't look too bad actually. In the back, we can see the seat material there, and then again the original carpeting. So for original carpeting, I mean, this isn't especially durable materials. It's actually survived pretty good. You know, you can see some evidence of a little bit of corrosion, but actually it's just not too bad. And again, under the mats here, can't see too much. What you do see, you know, looks like solid metal. Underneath the car, it's pretty low, so I can't really get down here. But it looks like the floor, there's a thick coat of undercoat on it, but there's no evidence that that there's a lot of or any rust or soft metal. Okay, so it looks like what they started with was probably a car that was involved in an accident, I would say, and that the metal was repaired, but the car doesn't look to be rusty. Okay, so that's the main thing. When you get what you don't want is a car that has, you know, structural rust in it. Okay, so all right, so we have a new spare tire. I can give you a look at this data card there. And this all looks to be original paint. So it looks like it was always yellow, although there's a couple of different shades. So when the new paint went on, it probably wasn't exactly the same color. In here, it looks like it's been freshly painted. And we can see there's the original paint back there. Okay. And the wiring looks to be, there's nothing too scary, and it's a jumble of wires, of course, but there isn't anything that looks to be too scary back there. Okay, so, you know, all in all, it's decent. Okay, let's look in the rear compartment. There we go. It'll be this. Okay, so now we're in the engine bay, and again we can see some of the original paint, and you know, these pieces were refinished. And is that a 6-volt or a 12-volt battery? Oh, I think it's a 12-volt battery. Okay, some of the early cars were 6-volt, and again, there's nothing in here that looks scary as well. I mean, these pans can rust out fairly easily. And it looks like we've got all the correct clips, hose clamps, routing, you know, vacuum lines. It all looks in place. It doesn't, I'm not a Karmann Ghia expert, but there's nothing in here that looks amateurish. I'll give you a close-up of the engine number there. And we've got some parts that are made in Brazil. Actually, Volkswagen Beetles and Karmann Ghias were all made in Brazil as well. So nice, in other words, it runs sweetly. In the interior, we've got the original vinyl door cards. And the original carpets, but it all looks to be decently preserved. Instruments are good, dashboard is good. We've got an aftermarket stereo in there. Switchgear is good. Forgive my camera bag there. Seats look good. I mean, it's, you know, this is a decent entry-level driver quality Karmann Ghia. I mean, it's something that you know, you could have a lot of fun with. See a little bit of cracking on the steering wheel there that I noticed, but a little bit of staining in the headliner, but nothing major. You wouldn't replace it, and overall, it's in nice shape. All right, let's take this car for a drive. Feels nice to drive an old car. I like the sort of positive attention that it will always bring. And this one's very easy to drive. Very sort of mild-mannered car. You know, a lot of the 50s and 60s cars, you know, they ask a lot of you as drivers, or they have stiff clutches, or they're hard to keep running, or they, you know, whatever it is, they're a bit of work. And it's a little bit of acclimatization to get used to the clutch, which is mounted from the floor. But once you do that, it's kind of just a happy little car. It's easier to drive than my 356 was. And yet, you know, a lot of the sensations are the same. Mostly that of a really light steering, compliant suspension, and just kind of the pleasures of driving a lightweight car, responsive car. We've got a Ferdinand Porsche design. We've got an Italian, for the mechanicals, we have an Italian coach builder, which is Ghia, influenced by some of the most prominent designers of the time. And then we have it built by Karmann, who was building body shells for Porsche. If they didn't make 450,000 Karmann Ghias, they would no doubt be very expensive. 85% of the experience of a Porsche 356 for about 25% of the cost. And the reason it's 25% of the cost is really just a function of how many that they made. Because, you know, even in this short drive, it's, you know, abundantly clear to me that this isn't that much different than driving a Porsche 356. This feels and smells like my 356C. Of course, they have the same genesis with Ferdinand Porsche Sr, who developed the Beetle and the Karmann Ghia using concepts that came from his pre-war designs, the Auto Union Grand Prix car, swing axle, rear, etc. And then Porsche took what was a VW Beetle floor pan and then developed it into the 356, slowly changing each bit for a little bit higher performance and higher cost, which made the 356, which started out as a 40 horsepower machine, like 1100 cc, into, you know, as much as 120 horsepower for the exotic twin cam engines. So the 356 Porsche and the VW Beetle gradually grew farther and farther apart as the years went on. But the origin of the car, the mechanical layout, the flat engine, air-cooled, swing arm suspension, synchromesh gearbox, all of those things were from the same person who was Dr. Ferdinand Porsche Sr. The period advertisements for these were great. You know, they'd have the Karmann Ghia sitting next to a Corvette and a Porsche, a Mercedes Pagoda, you know, the expensive sports cars at the time. And the advertisements made the point that this car looks every bit as good in you look every bit as good in it as the other cars that were double the price. And also then it went on to sort of extol the Volkswagen attributes of the air-cooled engine and no maintenance and no coolant, etc. Good fuel economy. The engine's very tractable from low revs. It's very quiet, and the suspension's very compliant. So I imagine it's not, you know, something you really want to hustle through twisty roads that quickly. But for driving around, sort of pleasant, you know, pleasant drives, it's actually quite a compelling choice, I think. And now that, you know, every classic just happened to, you know, is shot through the roof in terms of price, you know, there's very few affordable classics now. And yet the Karmann Ghia, I think only by virtue of its production numbers, there's just so many of them, is still a reasonable buy. So we got this car on the road, and it revs nice. This is second. Synchro's good, third gear. Tall gears in this car give it good fuel economy, and that's fourth. Fourth to third with a blip in the throttle is nice. I don't even need to do that. The synchros are good. But this car is 60 horsepower. It's one of the latest Karmann Ghias. Second year from last, 1973. And as such, it had the largest engine, which was 1600cc and about 60 horsepower. A 356 normal also had 60 horsepower. Okay, so this car is as powerful as the earlier 356s. And by earlier, I mean late 50s or early 60s. At the end of the 356 run, we had a 75 horsepower regular car and then a 95 horsepower. But a 356B, a normal, was the same power as this. So there's a lot of similarities between this car and the Porsche. They were both designed by Ferdinand Porsche, the constructor of this car, who built the bodies, is Karmann, who also built 356 Porsches. You know, the lineage of the car is really, you know, the same as the Porsche. We don't have any synchro noise. We don't have any clutch noises, and the brakes stop the car with some authority, so that's all good. 4-speed synchro gearbox is a treat if you're used to driving some vintage machines where first and second gear aren't synchro, like I've been. It seems like a real luxury. As is a quiet car, and one that can easily keep up with traffic. So, in summary, this is a decent amateur restoration that has no signs of any sort of worrying corrosion, that has a recent mechanical safety, that has been driven regularly, not very much, but regularly over the last few years, that is in decent mechanical order, and that's ready to use and enjoy. It's not a concours car. The bodywork on it, while not having any rust, is a little bit wavy in places. You know, the weather stripping is a little bit dry. You can see some masking lines, so, you know, in terms of a body job, it's only a maybe 6 out of 10. But mechanically,